Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Today's another live coronavirus update. Really excited to check in with y'all. Hope everyone is doing good. So we'll try to bring a lot of reason, logic, and evidence. We also will provide contrast, because we have to have a relative comparison, right? Again, things are good, guys. Things are good overall. I'm very happy where we're at. I mean, a lot of not so good things happening in different pockets of the country. So my perspective is we're going to zoom out, kind of look at the country as a whole, the world as a whole, and then we'll zoom into the U.S., and then we'll even zoom in deeper to different pockets of the U.S. So typically, statistical estimates are always wrong. It's just how it's always been. If you look at swine flu predictions back in 2009, they were off by a factor of 63x. Some of these studies, the early studies that came out that were predicting 2 million deaths here in the U.S., were off majorly. They had just had to revise the studies that were saying 500,000 people would die in Britain or UK, and that's revised down to 20,000. So a lot of these revisions are happening. Just for instance, just adding in, so when you do these models, they're predictably wrong, but small little things in a model like this has huge effects. So in the early research, when they were looking at the data for the US, they were predicting 2 to 3 million people dead. Now, just by adding one thing, such as social distancing in there, that took the estimate of 2 to 3 million down to 1 to 200,000. So you can see small little estimates make a huge difference. And then you also add a quarantine aspect in there, and then you add in things like azithromycin along with the chloroquine and the zinc. These little things can make a big difference. You also increase the ventilation as well, the vents for people in the ICU. Things start to look better and better and better. So are things bad? Yeah, they're definitely not good, but have they been bad? Have they been just as bad before? Yes, they have. Most of the hysteria from this situation is coming from the unknown. And so the more we can take the unknown and make it known by comparing similar things in the past, that's going to help us. Now, again, is flu the same thing as coronavirus? No. All right? Definitely not. One's an orthomyxovirus, that's the flu. One's a coronavirus, that's COVID-19, right? But do they have similar symptoms? Yes. Do they kill similarly? Well, I would argue the flu will probably still kill more. And it's also seasonal, so it comes back over and over and over again. And the fact that we still have some level of passive immunity from the flu, even though it mutates a little bit, and it still kills as much as it does, on average 36,000 a year. Just a few years ago, it killed 60,000 plus in 1 year, and that's just in the U.S. You're looking at 600 to 800,000 in the entire world in one season. So I would say the flu is actually much more virulent in just regards to its history of how many it infects and who it kills year in, year out. So yeah, but similar symptoms, similar disease progression in regards to pneumonia and the need for vents and ICU care. How many people were hospitalized this year of flu? 600,000, over like 1.5 million hospital visits, 600,000 in the actual hospital needing to spend the night. So this isn't something we haven't been. Now, where we're being hit really hard, we're being hit really hard in specific areas like New York. So of course, because of isolated areas where people are very, let's just say, compartmentalized, a lot of apartment buildings high up, a lot of very dense population, yes, that area is being overwhelmed. There's about 5 or 6 areas that are really being overwhelmed, but the rest of the country, it seems to be doing pretty decent outside of those big areas. And of course, the news is going to focus on those big areas as well. So we'll look at the data. So first off, I want to zoom out a little bit and just look at Europe. Okay, Europe's going to be really important. This is a really interesting website. It's called euromomo.eu. So they're looking at all of the death statistics in Europe. And now they're classifying it by age. So the red line here is going to be like kind of the average trend, okay? Anything above or below would be above average or below average, and then there's different standard deviations. So you can see different ages, 0 to 14, 5 to 14. So you can see, just generally speaking, we're actually down. This is our most current week, which is week 12, 2020. So we're down. We're at 5 to 14, down 0 to 14. Surprisingly, 15 to 64 in all of Europe, we're actually down, surprisingly speaking. Then you go up to age 65, you're actually still a little bit down, surprisingly. And then you look at all ages. So in all of Europe, we're actually down, right? So the big thing I want to look at is I want to look at blips above average for the population, because the biggest concern I have is you have things like coronavirus versus flu. Is it possible that coronavirus could take someone out before flu takes someone out? Yeah, it's possible. So meaning, if flu was going to kill 10,000 people this year, or 20,000, and corona killed 20,000, well, maybe 5 or 8 or 10 out of the coronavirus's 20 would have been taken by flu anyway. Does that make sense? So we have to look at the overall statistical average, so we can get a perspective on how many would normally go anyway, and we can compare that here statistically. Now, a couple things I want to highlight. They actually combine it and they look at it by country. Now, you will see Italy is up, though. So a lot of these countries are down. I mean, this kind of surprised me because, I watch the media and I'm like, okay, well, things have to be up. But in a lot of these countries, not quite so. So Austria down, Belgium just a little bit above normal, Denmark a little bit above normal, Estonia on average, Finland below, France is actually getting hit pretty hard by the coronavirus. And surprisingly or not, let's look at France. 3,024 deaths, and they are still down. Germany, normal. Greece, normal. Hungary, down. Ireland, normal. So Italy is definitely up a little bit, right? Okay, Italy is definitely up a little bit, but now let's compare. Have they been that high before in the past? Yeah, once, and even higher back. This is 2016, December 2016, even higher. So just trying to give you all perspective. When we have perspective, we can zoom out, zoom in. That provides perspective, right? There's something to be said like, if you've been there before and you got through it, then we can get through it again, right? So when we have that level of perspective, that helps give us confidence. Luxembourg, Malta, Netherlands is actually down, even though they're getting hit pretty hard. Portugal down. So Spain average. Switzerland up a little bit. UK is actually down, and they're actually getting hit pretty hard. UK, Scotland, UK, Ireland down, Wales down. So that gives you a perspective, right? This is really interesting. So this is euromomo.eu. So take a look at that so you can see. Now, that's very, very, very important, because when you know that we don't see an aberration above normal, this is not knocking people down. Like if we were to look at the 1918 Spanish flu, if we can go back and look at those stats, right, you would see huge aberrations above and beyond, because literally 2.7% of the population was just knocked out, right? 600,000 people in the U.S. No, I think it was about a third. It was a large chunk, but 2.7% overall, and it was hundreds of thousands in the U.S. But I think the population at the time was only like 100 or so million. So as a percent of the country, it took a major percent of the country out. And you could see big aberrations in the overall mortality graphs. Now, we're not seeing that right here. So that's perspective number one. Okay, let's kind of go back here and provide a little bit of perspective. So what's our goal overall? Goal is to flatten the curve. Seems like we're doing that now, which is really good. Seems like we're on the right track. Remember, for every, just to give some perspective to people, 90% of anyone that gets in contact with coronavirus will show no symptoms. They will be asymptomatic. Studies show up to 86%, which is 1 out of every 7.14. Other people and other experts say it's about 1 out of every 10 to 20 people will show symptoms, okay? Meaning 10 to 19 out of those people will show no symptoms at all. They'll have the virus, and they'll be making antibodies at some point for it to knock it out. So that's really good. So if you get the virus, number one, 90% chance of no symptoms whatsoever. Number two, if you get the virus, you have an 80% chance of those symptoms being mild or less. Okay. So in other words, you have about a 20% chance. So first off, 90% a chance of having no symptoms at all. Two, if you get the virus, there's an 80% chance of the symptoms being mild or less. So when you factor that all in, that's like a 99% chance of having virtually no issues at all. And then if you're in that 1% that could have a potential issue, you're looking at maybe a very minority of that 5 to 10% of actually needing a ventilator or needing more care that's going to be above and beyond. So just keep that in the back of your mind, because when someone tells you, hey, you have a 99% chance of being in a great place, that changes your physiology. It changes your hormones and your cortisol and your immune system versus people showing all these one-off situations of a healthy person dying, right? That does not provide context or help because you have to look at the global big picture of what's happening in the population. 150 kids die a year of the flu. How many of those cases do you see plastered on the front page of the New York Times or on CNN or on Fox News? You don't really see it, okay? There's a reason why it's showing now, right? Well, number one, you're the cut. So essentially, news media, you're the product, right? You're the product. They're selling your eyeballs to advertisers and distributors that are promoting whatever they're selling. So you're the product, they're selling you. And if it bleeds, it leads. So they're captivating your attention, okay? Number one. Number two, the more afraid you are, the more you're going to tune in, number two. But number three, the more fear you have, the more it's going to weaken your immune system. And that's kind of where I step in, because if we can frame what the statistics show and we can change it and put it in the affirmative and actually make it from the perspective, hey, 99% chance of you being in a good place, that changes your physiology. It changes how you interpret what's happening, which is great. It empowers you. So keep that in the back of your head. All right, so let's go look at a couple of things here. Let's provide some perspective. So article right here in The Hill, a couple things. A couple people last week have actually revised some of their predictions, like I mentioned. I'll highlight some of the things I want you to see here. But they predicted 500,000 people being dead in the United Kingdom, and they predicted as many as 2.2 million people being dead here. This is Neil Ferguson. He's a professor at the Imperial College of London, and he's responsible for firing up the panic machine. As well as the World Health Organization head, is a guy from Ethiopia. He predicted the 3.4% death rate. And they were all massively wrong. So this prediction of 500,000 for the UK, right here, this was revised down to less than 20,000 Britons. Now, just a little perspective, 24,000 people die a year in the UK of flu on average. So that's perspective, okay? Not saying this is flu, but we got to compare it to something, all right? So very important there. People are also talk about Italy, right? Let's go to Italy real quick. Italy, how many people are dead in Italy? Well, we got about 11,591 deaths. They're on the downward cycle. We're going to go look at the stats in 1 second. They're on the downward decline. You can see daily new cases dropping, and you can see we're starting to turn over the bell curve right here. I was saying last week we're probably a half a week to a week away from turning the bell curve, and I was saying Italy was almost there. It seems like Italy is doing that now. I still think we're a few more days away from turning the bell curve for the U.S. Maybe a week. Some experts are saying 2 weeks. I'm comparing it to other countries that have already gone through the process. So my biggest concern is a lot of governments, they're going to over-predict. As you see, right, we have the best prediction of the future is relevant past, and we've already seen predictions that were like 20 times off. That's ridiculous. Now, part of the reason why governments do that is because they rather under-prepare than they rather over-prepare you than under-prepare. I get that. The problem is if you over-prepare too much by scaring the crap out of the population, you're going to have other issues like the economy shutting down and people committing suicides and a lot of other depression and mental health issues. So we want to do our best to empower y'all. So first off, we can go look at the death rates here in Italy to give you a little contrast. Next is, take a look at this epidemiologist here. This is Richard Epstein. He's an epidemiologist out of Stanford. He's predicting a total death count of 6,513. Now, this is old. This is March 16th. So just to give you a little perspective, swine flu took in this country in 2009, on average, 12,000 deaths, up to 18,000 deaths in the U.S. Okay, we aren't even close to that. I think it will be under that. I think it will be, I said at the highest, this will be 50% of seasonal flu. Seasonal flu is, on average, 36,000. It's been as high as 60 to 70,000 in 2017. Okay, let's go back real quick here. The amount of people that are dying per week, let me find this data for y'all. The average people that are dying per week right now, and you can see in 2018 when we had a significantly bad flu, we were losing over 1,000 per week for 2 to 3 weeks. Sorry, we were losing 1,000 per week for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so about 8 weeks, almost a month and a half to 2 months. In 2018, we were losing over 1,000 people per week. Now, part of the reason why this is a little bit more severe now is because it's happening in isolation. It's happening in isolation in New York City more. So that's having a bigger stress on the system. I get that. So when we look at the top 6 states, we're going to see the top 6 states, 6 primary areas are about 75% of all cases and deaths. That's significant. So when you look at the global map on Johns Hopkins, you'll see the U.S. isn't all in turmoil like some of these areas are. That's good. That gives us hope. And if people do the right thing, like we're talking about, social distancing and quarantine, especially people that are, compromised, you're gonna benefit from this, and we're gonna go over that bell curve and knock this thing out. Plus, the reason why I'm optimistic is we have sunlight, we have UV, we have warmer temperatures coming. That's gonna make it harder for the virus to spread, as well as live out in the open air. So very important. There's a reason why we don't typically see flus go ever through the summertime, or even viruses go to the summertime, because they tend to be heat sensitive. They don't spread well, they don't live long, and they spread better in drier, non-humid weather. So when the humidity comes in and temperature comes in, viruses do not like that. So just giving you all some perspective. Let's go look at the Asteria Math versus the true math for today. Where are we at? 152,000 people cases-wise. Now, people have said, well, the United States is leading the world in cases. Yeah, we're also leading the world in testing, okay? And I guarantee you I'm going to tell you right now, there's millions of people that have this virus right now. There's millions. So this case will only go up once the 15-minute fast test from Abbott comes in. That'll be in very soon. You're going to see this case go through the freaking roof. How many deaths? 2817, okay? What's the overall mortality rate? 1.85%. Okay, now that's the Asteria Math. And just to give you perspective, the WHO said it'd be 3.4%. Those were our original estimates. It was bad data. Now let's look at the real math. What's the difference? Well, we have the cases the same, the deaths the same, the mortality rate's the same. The difference is we're factoring in the amount of people that are asymptomatic. You have to factor in asymptomatic cases all the time. If you factor in a 10x rate, it's 0.19% of the population, 0.19%. And if you factor in asymptomatic, right, this is the study here shows 86%. So 10x means 1 out of every 10 person is going to actually have symptoms. The 86% is 1 out of every 7.14. I put both in there because a lot of experts conjecture it's about 10 to 20. We actually have studies supporting that 86% here are going to be asymptomatic. Keep that in the back of your head. So we look at the 86% asymptomatic study. That's right here. 86% of all infections were undocumented, meaning they have the infection, just not have the symptoms. Oh, and here's the higher temperature. Higher temperature, high humidity, reduced transmission. That's great. This is actually data from China, which is really, really good. I love to see data like that. That only works in our favor, y'all. All right, so where was I at? We were just talking about, okay, we hit that. Okay, yeah, so let's go back here to the stats. All right, and so we talked about death rate here, 0.26 or 0.19. That's 18.38 or 13.16 times lower than what the WHO originally recommended that created this hysteria, right? Dr. Tedros out of Ethiopia said 3.16 to 18.38 times more. That's at 3.4% estimate. Let's go look at the world. Where are we at? 760 cases. And just so you know, swine flu, we had 1.4 billion cases when it was 1.1 billion when it was all said and done. We had almost a million deaths, between 500,000 and 1 million deaths worldwide. Keep that in mind. We're at 36,000 deaths, 4.85% mortality. This will start dropping and going a lot lower. Once we factor in the 10x asymptomatic rate, we're at 0.48 now. That's 7 times lower than what the WHO recommended. And then 1.24% if we do the 86%, which is still 2.73 times lower. And when we compare it to flu, here's our flu, 230 actual diagnosed people, 1.2 million tests conducted. So this is actually lab confirmed. That's important. So you take this number here, you extrapolate this number into 23 million cases actually have it. The data says 23 to 36 million right now on the CDC website. And that actually is around 23,000 deaths right now to date. It's 23,000 and change. But just to keep the numbers clean, true number of cases, mortality-wise, it's 0.1%. But if you use the Asteria Math, the media would be saying 10% of people are dying from flu, right? 230,000 confirmed cases, 23,000 deaths, that's 10%, right? No, we got to factor in the bigger number. We do what's called statistical regression, 23 million people. Now that rate drops down to 0.10. And then here's yesterday's rate, 1.44. So we did go up a little bit yesterday. Again, in the U.S., New York is skewing a lot of this. And then yesterday, worldwide, 4.51. So we're up a little bit as well. But again, when you have such a large amount of cases, such as the asymptomatics, that is going to change over time. And so, again, my goal here is just looking at the numbers, just giving you my perspectives, using reason and logic and evidence, trying to take people who are smart, wrapping my head around their thinking, and then just trying to get the data out to you all so you can digest it without any emotion behind it, okay? Let me go into some of the data today. So this is really cool. Let's go look at, so this is the worldometer.info. This is pulling directly from WHO. So when you look at data pieces and graphs like this, don't do this. This is scary. This is where cortisol starts to come out, okay? This is like a logarithmic, well, this says linear here, right? But it looks like it's parabolic, right? It looks like it's going up and will never end. This is the worst data you can look at. When you click on it, I've already done it here. This is the much better way to do it. All right, you want to do it like this so you're always comparing dates, new cases, and then you can see the trend. Guess what's happening with daily new cases? We're coming to the top of the bell curve. Now, could we pop back up in a day or two? It's very possible, okay? That's why I do these updates daily, and I always will, update my opinion as the data changes. I'm not going to be dogmatic and go all in on this, okay? But you can see it looks like we're rounding the bell curve, okay, with cases. And we know the cases, it takes anywhere between 5 days on average up to 2 weeks for symptoms to show. And the disease progression, if you're in that smaller 1 or 2% that actually have the disease and aren't mild, the disease progression to take your life takes about 2 to 3 weeks. So there could be anywhere between a 1 to 2 to 3 week lag time between the case showing up and actual death occurring on the data. Keep that in mind. And it depends. Some people, it takes 12 days. Time they show symptoms, they're dead in half a week, couple days. So sometimes it's a lot shorter. So you got to keep that in mind. So when we see these cases dropping, that means that the overall death rate is going to be dropping as well at some point. Now here's the growth factor. This is nice. So anything above 1 indicates an increase, where between 0 and 1 is a sign of decline. And even if it's at 1 but dropping, that's a good sign. So when you look here, we're consistently dropping from March 26th, 27th, 28th, and then look, we're actually below 1 here, 10% below 1. So that's good. That's a sign that this line here is getting more squiggly and then getting actually flatter. So our overall growth rate in regarding cases is dropping. I love that. That's a really good sign. Okay, now here's our daily deaths. Looks like we're rounding that corner as well. Could we pop back up in a day or two? It's very possible. We'll keep an eye on it. What gives me a good sign is this, the growth rate on cases is dropping, right? That's a good sign. And we're going to see the death rate drop even more when you do the real math and you look at the asymptomatics, it's even better. And then you can look at the growth factor right here. This line's getting smaller, smaller, smaller. And then look, it drops down to below 1. That's great. So with the news, y'all, let me just pause this here for 1 sec so you guys can see me. So with the news going on overall throughout the world, would you guys think worldwide we're in this good a shape? I don't think so. I wouldn't think that. So when I watch the news, I kind of compartmentalize my emotions. I compartmentalize my emotions from the data. And so I feel the data. I just see where I'm at and how things progress. And then I actually look at the data afterwards. So I compartmentalize what's the story, what's the emotion, and then let's look at the data on the backside. That's the best way to do it. Okay, excellent. Let me keep on rolling. So if we keep on going looking at the stats here, let's look at the U.S., all right? We have 2,854 deaths. So if we look at the cases, I like to do this. I like to look at total deaths. Let's put it all in order. All right, so you're going to see here New York, 1,200 deaths. Washington State, 202. New Jersey, Louisiana, California, Michigan, then a big drop-off. So when you look at these top 6 states, right, these top 6 states, about 75% of all the deaths are right in this one space, and about almost all the cases, 75% of the cases are in this area as well, 66% to 75%-ish. So number one, this isn't like a throughout the U.S. kind of pandemic issue. It's throughout the U.S., but not as severe in other places, meaning it's more manageable in other places. Certain places hit hard, yes, but rest of the country isn't doing that bad overall, okay? Keep that in the back of your head. Let's go look at, let's see how the U.S. is doing compared to the world. Let's look at that. People are like, oh, we have the most cases, but I mean, let's look at that. So of course we look at total cases. Yeah, we're like number one with total cases, but that's because we have number one in testing, okay? Let's look at deaths. Let's see where we're sitting with deaths. So you could see we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth place in deaths. All right, now I'll tell you, France, Spain, Italy, these are like G20 countries. These are all about 50 to 60 million population. So one thing we have to look at is deaths per population. Okay. Wait a minute, what happened? Where's the U.S.? Where'd they go? Oh, they're at 9 deaths. So that means for every 1 million people in the U.S., 9 people die. For every 1 million, 9 die. Let's compare it to Italy. 192. That's like 10x above that. Let's look at Spain. 157. Right? France, 46. And the U.S. is at 9. So you can see deaths per 1 million, we're looking really good. The cases doesn't matter because we're testing more. So as soon as we test more, the cases are going to be inflated. Once it's all said and done and the Abbott comes out with this 15-minute test, which just approved yesterday, everyone will be getting tested. And even that, it's still going to miss people. Why will it miss people? Well, number one, the false positive rate's still high, right? So it could give you, tell you that you're positive, but you're not. But number two, if I'm asymptomatic and I knocked out the infection in 2 weeks, would I test positive on the PCR test? No. You would need a blood antibody test to show you actually have antibodies from the infection. So you're still going to miss people on the lab testing because if you have a strong immune system, you're knocking this bug out in 1 to 2 weeks. You won't test positive on the PCR. You're going to need to look at your immune system. So PCR is looking at the piece of the RNA to see if you're actually positive for the infection. The second one's looking at an antibody response because once the infection's clear, the antibody response will hang out for years after the fact. Keep that in the back of your head. Okay, so we're looking at the U.S. pretty good overall. When you look at deaths per 1 million, we're looking really good. People have said, oh, we're number one for cases, but that doesn't matter. Let's look at total deaths or deaths per million. That gives us a frame of reference because not every country is the same size. Let's compare a couple of things. This is very helpful. Let me give you my perspective, where my mindset is in this. Okay, so I'm comparing, when I'm like looking at the data here, I'm trying to give my opinion based off of like worst case scenario. So if I look at Italy, which I think we all can agree, Italy's done the worst out of any country here so far. Okay, remember they're like literally almost 20x above us in regards to total deaths per million, right? They were at like 180, 190, we're at 9. Okay, that's great. We're like 20x better. So let's look at daily new cases. So you can see we're starting to come at the top of the bell curve. This growth rate is totally slowing down. Remember, it was at 0.9, and we compare it to Italy. Italy kind of hit that last week. Now, if we compare to Italy, Italy started having cases February 22nd, 23rd. We started having one on the, where do we have it? We had United States. Our first case was like March 10th. They started having it February 23rd. So technically, they're like 2 weeks ahead of us, right? Now, here's the issue. They have an older population. So is it possible their cases showed symptoms sooner? It's very possible. So I'm thinking they're about 7 to 10 days ahead of us. We could say about 2 weeks according to this data, but I'm just thinking that based on their population, those people are just passing a little bit sooner. I'm sorry, those cases are showing symptoms a little bit sooner, okay? Now let's look at the deaths over here. This is going to be U.S. up top here. This is Italy at the bottom, okay? U.S. top, Italy bottom. And their first death was March 12th. Their first death over here was February 29th. So I'm thinking like a week to 10 days, maybe a 2 week lag, okay? Maybe a 2 week lag. And again, There's some confounding variables with Italy, right? Italy has a whole bunch of, 500,000 legal Chinese citizens. They didn't close down their borders. A lot of multi-generational households, grandparents, parents, kids, and then a very old population, 7 million people over the age of 70. That's, very old population. So let's go look here. So if you look at their daily deaths, their deaths are kind of topped out here, March 24th, 26th. And then you could see we could be rounding it out here. This is March 28th, 29. So you can see we could be rounding it out here. Let's look at where we're at today to get today's tally. United States today is going to be at, let's look at total deaths. We're at 271. We're at 271 already. Let's go back 271 and let's look at where we're at back then. Let me go back here. Let me go United States. Let's go graph it out. 271. Okay, so we're already way below the 29. So we're 363. We hit our high at 525. Could we be down here where my mouse is now? Could we be? That'd be amazing. If that statistic shows up, that gives me like a lot more optimism about what's happening. So you could see here, if we look at the overall death rate, this is the U.S., we're like here now, okay? That's today. Could that go up? Yeah. So maybe we're rounding the curve right now, okay? Maybe. And then you can see that's with our daily deaths. And then you can see Italy, they've kind of rounded the curve in the last 4 to 6 days on average. You have a couple little bump up here, but on average, the trend has been rounding the last 4 days or so, 5 days. So I'm hoping that we're either rounding now or we'll be rounding by the end of the week. And the warmer the temperature gets and the more humid it gets only helps us. So I'm thinking we're about 7 days to about maybe 7 to 14 days off of Italy. I'm going to go with 7 to 10 and I'll hedge at 14. So if Italy's rounding the curve now and we're starting to show signs of rounding the curve here, that tells me that we are on the right track. So just keep that in the back of your head. That's where I'm coming up with the data. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at trends. I'm trying to look at countries that did bad, right? There are countries that did really good. Like we could look at South Korea. I mean, South Korea is about 50 or 60 million people. It's about the size of California. And look at their daily cases. I mean, they just squashed it from the beginning. And they didn't close down their economy, by the way. They did a strategic quarantine with young and old and immunocompromised and old quarantine, and they just did all the good social distancing stuff. And then here's the general trend. There's a couple of aberrations in here, but the general trend is it's dropping, which is great. And then let's go look at Germany here as well. I think Germany's done a pretty good job. 560 deaths. They're already rounding the curve in their cases, as you can see. They haven't quite rounded it in their death rate, but if the cases are already rounding, then everything else is coming not too far behind. Let's look at the UK. They're starting to round the bell curve here with the cases. Again, there's a predictable pattern this virus is following. They're rounding the curve with their cases. The death rate, they're already starting to round the curve. So we'll see that could pop back up again. We'll have to keep that in the back of our head. Let's look at Germany. Daily new cases dropping. Deaths are still on the upside. Let's look at Spain. I'm just picking countries that have been hit a little bit harder. Okay, look at daily new cases for Spain. They're rounding that curve. Let's see if it's translating. Yeah, and they're almost at the top, I think, with their death rate. We'll see. I mean, they could pop back up again, but they're looking pretty good. They're at 821 here on the death side. Let's look at where they're at today. That was Spain. And they're at 537. So we'll see if that continues to hold true. If it does, then that means they're on the downward side as well. So I just want to give you guys some perspective. We've been hit hard before. Certain sectors and cities are getting hit a little bit harder than normal or than ever. Keep that in the back of your mind. But overall, things are looking optimistic. And the big things that you can be doing here outside of the common sense, PR, public health, public safety thing, wash your hands, social distancing, is make sure your diet's solid, right? Whole food diet. Stay away from processed food, processed grains, processed sugar, processed alcohol. Lots of good fruits, lots of good vegetables, lots of good healthy fats and healthy animal proteins are going to be an excellent way to go. You can keep the carbs down. Higher sugar will shut down your immune system's ability to digest virus and bacteria. Next thing is if you have the ability to supplement. If you don't, work on the diet stuff, work on good hydration, good water. My big supplements are going to be vitamin A and D are going to be the easy, low-hanging fruit. 2 tablespoons of cod liver oil a day is going to be excellent for vitamin A. Vitamin D, you can do 5 or 10,000 IUs a day, or for at least next couple of weeks, I think is safe. 5,000 is more conservative. 10,000, if you want to be a little bit more out of the box. And then vitamin C, we can always go up to bowel tolerance, which I've talked about before. You can get your stools a little bit more on the looser side by tapering the vitamin C up, maybe 5-10 grams a day, and then back off till your stool solidified. Vitamin A, D, and C, I think, are good and foundational. There's other things that we can do. Feel free and go back and look at my previous podcast on nutrients to bump up and improve your immune system, or I should say herbs. So nutrients are going to be A, C, and D. And then other things that you can do on top of that, N-acetylcysteine, zinc, those still fall into the nutritive category as well. Medicinal mushrooms like reishi, Organoderma lucidum, astragalus is excellent. You can do silver. You can do monolaurin is excellent. Glutathione/NAC, which goes into the nutrient category as well. And you can even do things like elderberry is excellent as well. There's a bunch of other things. Andrographis is really good, and echinacea root is awesome as well. Again, for more details, take a look at my previous podcast on immune boosting support for viruses. All right, this is Dr. J here. Let me see if you guys have any good questions. And if you guys are enjoying it, give me a thumbs up. If you got the corona, put it down below. I want to know what you're doing, how you're feeling. If you got any other ailments going on here, let me know as well. Really want to give you some great feedback. All right. What is going on, guys? Okay, I'm going to go right to questions that pertain to the topic. Anything else, I'm going to just skip it. Will spring, summer, winter change and slow down the virus? Seems like your warmer countries are getting hit as well. Yeah, it will slow down. It will definitely slow down for sure. Remember, it's northern Italy that's getting hit. It's not Rome. It's not the southern Italy portions, okay? And that's getting hit. That's where the largest amount of elderly are as well. And when we look at the Euromoma stats, yeah, we're high, but we've been there 2 or 3 times before. And we look at overall Europe, it's not really touching too much. But yes, the weather, the UV light, and the humidity will help. You should interview Dr. Campbell from the UK to discuss COVID-19. That'd be great. Would love it. Thanks, David. Really appreciate it. It's useless to load up on zinc, vitamin D, etc. if you have diabetes. Well, I mean, it depends. If you have a zinc deficiency, will taking an extra 20 or 30 grams of zinc a day help you? Yeah, it really will. If you already have great zinc stores because your diet's awesome, will it help a little bit? Maybe a little bit. Zinc's cheap. Zinc picolinate, zinc bisglycinate, I think it's worth throwing an extra 20 or 30 milligrams into your diet a day, maybe via a lozenge. I think it's fine. It's low-hanging fruit. And vitamin D will definitely help you. But again, if you have diabetes, yeah, I agree. Get your blood sugar and your diet under control. But if you're going to do that and do these things, well, now you supercharge it, right? California's 1.3 million Chinese and almost 40 million people. Does it really seem logical that CA has been hit lightly, or is it possible that started late? I think this virus has been here for a very long time. I think it's been here for at least 1 to 2 months longer. The biggest thing about California, they're going to have better weather. They're going to have better weather and a little bit more sunlight, a little bit more UV, and that could be helping them. Now, I personally thought LA was going to be hit a lot harder because of their homeless population, obviously, with sanitation and living in close quarters and poor health, but they haven't been hit that hard. So that's very surprising. Currently have someone with pneumonia nebulizing glutathione. Excellent. Doing ginger NAC. Excellent. Oh, yeah, and ginger's also on my list. I'm sipping ginger right now. I woke up with a little bit of a dry throat, so guess what I do? Tablespoon of honey, a whole lime in there, and then I ground about 2 to 3 ounces worth of pure ginger juice in the pulp, and I put it in a French press, let it sit, and I make about 18 to 20 ounces, about 24 ounces of it, and I just sip it gently throughout the day. And again, the honey just kind of, 1, it's medicinal, but 2, it kind of coats the throat a little bit, and this is not being drunk fast. It's being drank over the whole course of the day. Okay, excellent. Where did I get data on testing? That is a study right here. Here's the study data. This is the study. Potential false, let me put it up on screen. Potential false positive rate among asymptomatic infected individuals in close contacts. Nearly half or even more of the asymptomatic infected individuals reported in the active nucleic acid testing might be false positive. So nearly half, okay? And then if you go up here, it says up to 80% were actually false positive. That's where that data came from. And this is the study right here, so you guys can see. I try not to throw much BS at y'all. I'll just give it to you like I can. Okay. Currently with someone with, okay, good. So doing ginger, NAC, C, D, A, zinc, energy is good. No fever. Taking azithromycin, metoprolol, doc. What do we look for or ask at follow-up? Well, I mean, the big thing I would just look at, if you can get a pulse oximeter, make sure your oxygen saturation is good. That means the lungs aren't being badly affected. If it starts dipping below 90%, let your doctor know. But outside of that, sleep great, lots of fluid, lots of hydration. Make sure there's a lot of good minerals in that water. So drink like a Topo Chico or a Pellegrino, or add some mineral salts to that to really help keep your minerals and your body totally hydrated. Excellent. Definitely, you get the zinc in there. You're doing a great job. I mean, that's all you can do. Just make sure everything with the diet and lifestyle is kicking butt. Really good. The pneumonia has been taking, he's also been taking a natural med for parasites. I would be careful. I wouldn't be doing a whole bunch of parasite killing now. Really work on nourishing and supporting the immune system, because that can be a little bit stressful. Okay, here. Emma had a question, a little bit off topic. Emma, I'll do another live, Dr. J live, later this afternoon, where we can do questions outside of this topic. I think we hit all the questions here today, guys. A couple of repeats here, a couple of off topics, so we'll just leave it at that. Hey, today's chat was awesome. If you guys are enjoying this, thumbs up, comments down below. Really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you get notifications. And if you want to work with me directly, dive in. I see patients from all over the world. If you want to, I'm available. All right, guys. And we can keep our social distancing too. It's a little plus. All right, guys. I'll be back later on today. You guys enjoy. Make sure you share with friends and family. Take care, y'all. Bye.